Hello, everybody, and welcome to Adventures in History. I'm your host, guy with two thumbs and lots of magical pieces of paper that tell me that I'm smart. Or perhaps just a guy that has a really weird brain and can cram lots of somewhat random pieces of data up there. Hey, DJ, good to see you. Hope you're feeling better. Right off the bat, Metrand. I'm Spartacus.
I'm Spartacus. I'm Spartacus. I'm Spartacus. I'm Spartacus.
Adventure. So the intro music is called The Story Begins. At some point, shouldn't we find a song called The Story Continues? That's a fair question to ask, Moose. I don't know. If you can find a free use, non-copywritten song that won't get me in trouble for using it, that also fits the general theme that is called The Story Continues, I will absolutely give it a listen. So let me say hey to everybody. Lots of people here off the bat. Hey, DJ, good to see you. Hope you're doing well. Metrand, thank you so much for that sub. Much appreciated. 4 months. That's crazy time. Moose, thank you very much for being here. Good to see you. Martest, how's it going, my friend? Welcome, welcome. Hello to my lovely wife. Joey, good to see you. How's it going? How's it going? You frauds? It's okay. There's enough Spartacus to go around for everybody, right? We can all be Spartacus. Hey, Figment. Good to see you. Now, I was actually lucky enough last night to hang out and have dinner with my wife and Figment last night. It was great to catch up, and Figment's been out of the country for a few years, so we haven't had a chance to see each other. Also, we don't live in the same part of the States, so it was very nice to have Figment in the area. It was a good time, and we made lots of weird teaching jokes and talked about oblique history references that only a few people get. It was a good moment. Are you not entertained? Is that not why you are here? David Peterson. It's almost like we planned this or something. Hey, David. You are here to be entertained. Hey, Clipper Fury. So, hey, everybody coming in on the raid. For those of you that do not know me by anything other than my little name and David's chat, hi, I'm Shane. I am a college teacher, and I am a trained historian and sociologist, and we have a stream here called The Adventures of History. And on every other Tuesday night, we do viewer requests. And tonight, we are just so happy to be here to do a viewer request on the First Crusade. But we don't do history the kind of way that you might be familiar with history, which is basically like, Professor Binns from Harry Potter, or some weird old fuddy-duddy that just basically stands up at the front of the room and wants to, sort of like, and I realized that my stream, for some reason, is dropping frames. I don't know why, but OBS is blinking the little red light at me, so crazy time. But yeah, we talk about history in a fun way, and we make lots of bad puns and dad jokes and pop cultural references, and we'll go off and chase tangents all over the place, and, it's just a good time. It is not your old-fashioned history stream. Though, eventually, I will be a crazy old white guy. Dun 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 dun! Dun 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 dun! Clipper Fury, thank you so much for that. And welcome to the adventure. Hey, Depugo, good to see you in the chat. Good to see you in the chat. There we go. But yeah, everybody can participate in whatever fashion that you seem fit. If you'd like to chat, you're welcome to chat. If you like to just lurk, you're welcome to do the lurking. Bum ba dum 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 dum. OBS will self-destruct in 5, 4. Progs, thank you so much for that follow. All of the follows. Sleepless Ninja, thank you for that follow, and welcome to all. to the adventure.
You shall have camels,
Jaina,
horses,
just throwing the bits around.
provisions, desert vehicles.
And tanks.
You're welcome.
You're welcome. Thank you very much, Jaina, for the bits. Yeah, so normally when you might catch me, I'm usually on every Thursday night at 1900 Central Standard Time, and we do a show called Adventures in History where we talk about history in chronological order. And we literally started at the very, very beginning, and we have caught up to the 4th century of our modern time, so the numbers are going up now instead of going down. And then we take viewer requests. So every other week we'll come in and we'll do a stream on whatever people want. And this one is actually something that has been voted on by our viewers. At the end of the last viewer request stream, we had ourselves a poll, and this is what everybody wanted to talk about. So First Crusade it is. I love this kind of stuff anyway. We've got ourselves a little Google Earth map over here that we can point at and move around. And we'll have some pictures here in just a second. So yeah, if you're kind of interested, or even if you think, history kind of sucks, but maybe this guy seems okay. Dun 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 dun. Paperback Rhino, thank you for that follow and welcome to the adventure. What do you do to keep the curse from happening? You can't stop the curse of OBS. It is a powerful curse that has no counter curse. You might only pray to your gods for deliverance and salvation. And even then, it might not work. Yeah. All right, so if you've hit the follow button or anything like that, remember that below your chat, you are accumulating adventure points, and there are lots of things in there that you can do, even just with a basic follow. You can have some direct interaction if you would like. Please do ask questions. There is no small question that's not worth asking. If it's a rabbit that we can go chase, we love chasing rabbits and tangents and stuff like that. So, we're going to talk about the First Crusade. The First Crusade against the curse. But we don't destroy every temple we walk into during these adventures. Yes. We are not the destructive archaeology. I have been on several trips to foreign places and done some field archaeology kind of stuff. We don't do the destruction of temples and the burning of things and the being chased by natives with bows and arrows. And I've never actually punched a Nazi. I don't know if I've ever seen a Nazi in real life to punch them in the first place, but lots of RAM and gigabyte uninterrupted internet. But yes, Nix, that is accurate. Is this question worth asking? Yes. And your answer is yes. Hey, Uncle Bill, good to see you. How are you? Hope everybody's having a good one. All right, so yeah, we're talking the First Crusade. And it's fair to point out that there is a lot of what we might call Romans. Countrymen, lend me your ears.
I come to bury Caesar, not to praise him.
Uncle Bill, thank you so much for that host. It is much appreciated. Yeah, so it's fair to note here that when we talk about the Crusades, we are going to be talking about stuff that is, number one, rather religious, and number two, something that has a lot of politically charged ideology behind it. So I will remind everybody, or maybe if you have not been here before, there are a basic set of rules, but everybody's probably going to be able to follow those. Basically what they say is we can have differences of opinions and we can still be really good friends, right? And this is an open place where we can discuss our opinions in a way that is organized and fruitful and not pointed or ad hominem, because we're cool like that, right? So there we go. Oh wow, the official Knowledge Fellowship? Dun dun! Knowledge Fellowship, thank you for the follow, and welcome to the adventure. You haven't punched a Nazi that you know of. That's true. I was not always the composed, right-thinking individual that I am now, and I do live... Oh wow, I'm just getting all of the stuff. Yes, all of the stuff. Knowledge Fellowship, thank you for the host. All right, so again, we're going to be talking about stuff it can be viewed in multiple particular angles because the particular request was from this more or less from the point of view of the Europeans. That is how we're going to be approaching it, but we are going to talk about what's going on over in the Arab and Turkish and Muslim worlds as well, because it is very much part of the entire story of this. And the story of the First Crusade does not start the year before it happened. This is something that was a product of about 4 or 5 decades worth of military buildup and big cultural shifts that had been happening in Europe, and military buildup and central authority breakdown that had been happening over in the Arab worlds. And there are going to be a lot of people, there are going to be a lot of names tonight and a lot of places, and they're all going to be sort of weird sounding, like Blois and Le Puy, and it's got French people in there, and we've got Greek named people like Alexius and Comnenos and all these people, and so it can be a little bit overwhelming to try to put all of this in perspective, but we're going to try to do our best. So the first place we need to start talking when we talk about the First Crusade is what's going on over in the Byzantine Empire. Because the Byzantine Empire is going to be the initiator of this crusade. And now I know that's not necessarily what a lot of people think. A lot of people are like, well, wait, what was that guy Pope Urban doing? Well, we'll get into that. So if we look at, the Byzantine Empire, at the time, this is in about 1095. This is basically all that's left of the Byzantine Empire. Now, at one point, the Byzantine Empire had been the entire eastern half of Rome. So if you remember sort of what the Roman Empire looked like, and you drew a line roughly right here, everything on this side would have been the Byzantine Empire. This is Greece and Turkey, places like Syria, the Levantine region, Egypt, which would be sort of down this way, northern Africa. All of that would have been part of the Byzantine Empire. However, the Byzantines were sort of on the ropes. If you notice here, we've got this new big thing here called the Seljuk Sultanate of Rum. We have several countries over here: Hungary, Croatia, Diocletia. This also might be called Serbia. And we have the Kingdom of Sicily. We have all these people that are sort of barging in on the Byzantine Empire, and this is what's going to put them in the position that they are in. And that was one of incredible weakness. They had lost a lot of their trading ports. They had lost access to their largest food supply, which was coming out of Egypt. Not rum as in like the alcoholic beverage rum. Rum as in the way that you would say Rome in an Arabic accent. So some people actually refer to this as Rum, the Seljuk Sultanate of Rum. You can say it either way. Rome does not directly translate very well into the language there. But the Byzantines were in bad shape, and they had lost a lot of territory to these Seljuk people. So who are these Seljuks? Well, first off, the Seljuks were Muslim, and they had converted to Islam somewhere around the 900s range, so only about 200 years prior to our stage setting here in the First Crusade. And they had initially been used as mercenaries for some of the larger caliphate maneuvers that were going on in, if we were to sort of zoom in over here a little bit further on in the Arab worlds. But they had very quickly sort of superseded a lot of the existing caliphates, and they had pushed out a lot of the big central authorities here over in what we would today know as Iraq and Saudi Arabia, and even over here into what we would call today Iran, Armenia. So the Turkish people are originally going to come from the sort of central Asian steppe north here of the Caspian Sea. And they're going to take over basically all of this. Now, there is another caliphate down here called the Fatimid Caliphate, which had taken over Egypt. They're going to be sort of the Muslim arch nemesis of the Seljuks. But the Seljuks had this really big empire that stretched basically this entire region right here. which is not insubstantial. It's quite a big territory. And they would love to take over the Balkan Peninsula, and especially the city of Constantinople. So this is going to put the Byzantines on the back foot, right? Having a no sleeping night, it seems. That's unfortunate. So workshopping some PowerPoint slides to start off a group assignment in your archaeology course. Awesome. Happy to see the stream. Oh, yeah. If you ever need some help with any of that stuff, you're welcome to shoot stuff my way. If I'm awake, I'd be happy to help out. I know that we're on a pretty big time difference, but, you know. Yeah, Figment's like, I don't like the group work. So we've got these two empires, the Byzantine Empire and the Seljuk Empire. But right before we get to the beginning of the Crusades, the Seljuk world is going to start disintegrating from the inside. And there are going to be lots of smaller factions that begin to fight for central authority. And there are going to be multiple different very small rulers, and the borders inside of the Seljuk Empire are going to start shifting quite frequently. So you've got your Sultanate of Rum over here, but even the borders of that are sort of somewhat fluid. The Fatimids are going to extend territory up here into the Levantine region. They're actually going to take the city of Jerusalem, which is very important to the Arab faith because of the Dome of the Rock there. The Muslim faith. And that's going to be a sticking point that the Seljuks are going to try to fight to take back. There are 2 or 3 different leaders in this region right around in here. We have a problem with some leadership over here in Syria, over here in northern Mesopotamia, and over here in Armenia. All of these people want to be in charge, but of course we know that only one person can be in charge if you're going to have a big empire, and this is where some of the internal problems are going to be. So when the Byzantine Empire is in this position of weakness and they sense that there is a right time, right? They sort of understand that the pressure has been let off a little bit. This is when some movement is going to start happening. And it's going to start with the Byzantine emperor at the time. We'll just put that on 2 lines. A guy named Alexios Komnenos, who looks like this. This is the emperor here. Yeah, that's a stern-looking face. You know, he means business. Look, and he's got a book. That means he's smart. He's got nice clothes. He's got the cool little sandals down here, very Eastern. Oh, yes, very much. So this is Alexios Komnenos, and he's going to be the guy that sort of gets this whole ball rolling. And there's a reason for that. So he's going to start sending letters over to the western part of Europe. Now, we do need to talk about one more thing before we actually get to the sort of the planning and the plotting of this thing. And that is this thing that happened in 1054 called the Great Schism. And we won't go into the entire story of the Great Schism, but suffice to say that the Catholic Church at that time had a great schism. And this is going to be an argument over the authority of the bishop in Rome. So we can't go into the entire thing because to unpack that is an entire stream to itself. But what we can say is that there at that point were 2 Christian churches. There was the Roman Catholic Church, which is the official Catholic Church of this region over here in the West. And then there is the Orthodox Catholic Church, which is the Christian community over here in the East. And both sides had effectively excommunicated the other side, so basically they thought that both sides were going to hell. And this had driven a very large wedge between Eastern Christians and Western Christians. And this had also put a really big damper on East-West trade relationships and East-West military cooperation, right? I've missed some chat here. The book is upside down. It's been mostly group work, and you're not a fan. That's unfortunate. Yeah, group work kind of stinks. He was looking at the cover of the book. He probably can't even read it. Komnenos was literate. I would think so. Been there, done that. You wish, well, yes, absolutely. Coloring books still count as books. This is true. This is true. Maybe he's practicing his upside down reading. We never know. We never know, right? So when Komnenos, the emperor of Byzantium, sends notes over to Western Europe was no longer unified, except in religion. So you've got your kingdom of Spain and England and France, and you've got your Holy Roman Empire, and you've got your Italian states. But he sends the letter to the Pope. The Pope at the time is a guy named Urban II. I need to cut some people all out. So we'll do that, and we'll get rid of Komnenos, and we'll get rid of Great Schism. So we'll have Alexios, and we'll have Urban II. How about that? At the risk of rabbit hole, I only want to know, did everyone in the East go along with the schisming? No. Neither did everybody in the West go along with the schisming. The authority of the Catholic Church at the time had been in some debate going all the way back to the earliest of the ecumenical church councils. The first one being a Council of Nicaea in the 320s AD or CE, whichever one you want to use. And the biggest issue is that the leadership of the Catholic Church at the time was based around these big cities called patriarch cities. And there were 5 of them. So there's one in Rome, there's one in Constantinople, there's one in Antioch, there's one in Jerusalem, and there's one in Alexandria. So if you look at how this is balanced, there are 4 of them over here in the east, and there's one of them over here in the west. And when it came to drawing the ecumenical boundaries, right, what are called the sees, you know, like your archbishopric see, or your you know, the area that is going to be under your ecumenical leadership, the Bishop of Rome got the entire West. So that gave him a substantial leg up in negotiating documents or church council canons, accurate theology, because the other regions had high populations, but they did not have that much, right? So it was like half of the empire versus an eighth and an eighth and an eighth and an eighth and an eighth. So the Roman archbishops always had always thought that they were sort of special anyway. And then you get this whole Petrine theory started, where basically there's a verse in the Bible where Jesus asks, who do you say that I am? And he's asking this to his disciples. And one of the disciples named Simon says, you are God, you know. And Jesus says, blessed are you, Simon Bar-Jonah, for this was not revealed to you by man, but by my Father who is in heaven. And then he changes his name to Peter, which is Greek for rock. And then he says this very famous statement that upon this rock I shall build my church. So a lot of Christians looked at that as the statement that Jesus was God, was the rock upon which Christianity would be built. But the bishops of Rome said, no. He was actually talking about Peter. So Jesus chose Peter to be a special disciple, and because Peter founded the church in Rome, that makes Rome special. So there had been an argument about the special status of Rome going way back to the very, very early beginnings of the church. So this is like 1,000 years old, right? And I know that was a long rabbit, but it was absolutely worth chasing, right? Western civilization was in such turmoil that we didn't even record a supernova that was visible then. There were a couple, and I think that one was picked up by the Chinese, Uncle Bill. I think we know of that because of a Chinese astronomer. Antioch, known for its holy hand grenades. Indeed! Your group got a shard of ceramic with no context. Nice. That actually sounds really neat. there are sort of like an unknown in chemistry or microbiology where you get a vial of something and you have to tell your professor what's in it. That's pretty cool. I appreciate that project. Okay, so Alexios is going to start asking for aid, and he's going to send ambassadors to church meetings where the Pope is going to be. And this is where we're going to start getting our momentum built towards the Crusade. There's a particular council in 1095. It's called Piacenza. It's the Council of Piacenza. It's in Italy in 1095. And Urban II, who is the Pope at the time, hears a lot of different stuff, and they talk about a lot of different things. It's sort of like a theological conference. But at the end of it, up comes this representative from the Byzantine emperor, and he basically lays out this whole thing. Like, look, we're in trouble. The Seljuks are knocking at the door. We're losing a lot of our territory. We have already lost Antioch, which again was one of these patriarch cities. We have lost Alexandria, patriarch city. We have lost Jerusalem, patriarch city. And we can't get there anymore. The people that are holding this territory are very hostile to us. We are no longer able to even go on pilgrimage. There are Christians that are still living in these big cities that are being either forced to convert or treated differently because of social, differences and such. And if we die, you're going to be next, basically, right? So if the Byzantine Empire falls, you're going to be on the border of the advancing Turkish armies, and they're coming for you next. And Urban is smart enough to understand what was really going on here, and actually sort of hopes that this might be something that they could work together on, because the schism that had happened 40 years earlier was not something that Urban was super excited about, and he thought that this might actually be a moment to get some rapprochement between the two sides. Like, maybe if we can coordinate against a bigger bad enemy, maybe we can get the church back together and we can get everything worked out. That's not actually going to end up happening. It's going to end up actually worse. 1054 produced the Crab Nebula, and it was noted by several non-Roman civilizations. 1181 is lesser known, and yeah, only the Chinese and Japanese recorded it. Okay, Uncle Bill, thank you for clarifying that. I knew that somewhere around there, there was a Chinese record of a supernova. The Crab Nebula, that's really cool. I love that. I've always loved astronomy, and when I was little, I wanted to be an astronomer. I got a little telescope, and I would go out in the backyard and look up at stuff, and started trying to learn all the craters of the moon and things like that. I don't know why I changed my mind on that. I don't know. I think I just like the stories more. Right? History is basically just a string of stories that you can kind of like loop together, and it's all just big chapters of the same, kind of ongoing series, I guess. And I am nothing if not a storyteller, so I guess that's probably what drew me away. Anyway, so what's to happen? Well, Urban is going to start thinking about this stuff, right? He's going to really start giving this a lot of thought. And there were a lot of problems in Western Europe as well. If you went back about 100 years or so, one of the big things that was still a sort of running threat were what are referred to as the Viking invasions, right? These are the people from Scandinavia who were sort of terrorizing Western Europe. And even in the early 1000s, these people were still getting a lot of traction. And by the time that we get to our Crusade period in the 1090s, there had even been further expansion, because the people that were Vikings that came out of the Scandinavian region had settled in France, and at that point became called Normans, which is basically just Northman, right? So if you know what Normandy is in France, that's the region of the Northmen. Go figure. But there were even Normans down here in southern Italy. So these people were still expanding, and there were still a lot of tension issues going on. When the Normans took over France, or they took over northern France, Then you had this guy named William the Conqueror who went over and conquered England and became king there. So then the King of England had territory over here in England, but also over here in France. And the French didn't like that. And the Holy Roman Empire didn't like the French. And the Italians weren't unified yet. So they didn't really like anybody except for who paid them. And you've still got these big Norman armies running around. So there's all this political tension over in Western Europe. And Urban sort of saw this as an opportunity to maybe kill multiple birds with one stone. Like, look, if we can just give everybody sort of one focus, maybe we can get everybody to just calm down and play nice with each other, right? So this is when he is going to start thinking about what a crusade would look like. Quick tangent. How about a future stream on ancient Babylonian astrology and how it became astronomy? We have done the history of astronomy already and talked about the Babylonians a lot, Drop Bear. If you want to go back into the viewer request archive, I can actually tell you which episode that was if you give me just a second. Viewer request episodes. All right, where is it? There we go. Blood, Leprosy, Khmer Rouge, Books and Printing, Hellgates, Metallurgy, Mountain Cultures. Viewer request episode 14. Episode 14 is on the history of astronomy and how it's split off into astrology. So, 1054 would have been 4 times as bright as Venus. Wow. That's crazy. Tested it. Speaking of Vikings, this week's assignment is an analysis of a Swedish museum's digital Viking exhibition. The exhibition has an English option. Oh yeah, absolutely. Metran, please do. I would love to give that a look over. If you're interested in history stuff, you can join our Discord. We mostly just share memes and kind of chat back and forth with each other. I sort of curate news articles that pop up that I find interesting that are history related. But it's a good time. We don't really blow people up with too many notifications or anything like that. So pop on over. Have a good time. So Urban's getting this idea. We're going to get everybody together. We're gonna take the focus of our Western European anger. We're going to put it on the Muslims. And we're going to take the focus of the church split and we're going to focus it on working together. And so Urban really is sort of acting here as a bit of like a Game of Thrones-y kind of character where he's trying to get everybody to do his sort of bidding by using some other slightly obscured methodology here. And just a few months later at the Council of Clermont, this is sort of the famous council here. And there's even this image here, which is Pope Urban talking to other bishops at Clermont. Notice he's got this like really one pointy finger like, no! Also, because medieval art, everybody looks the same. Like, how do you know that this is Urban other than he's the guy with the fancy stand? He's the one in the pulpit. But yeah, this is Urban, and he's talking to the other church leaders. And this is the very famous speech where you've been eating too much, Jimmy. I can see your pudge under your vestments. Right? So this is where he's going to give the very famous speech where he lays out the entire methodology of Crusade, where it's like, you know, we are Christians, we've got to stand together. If we don't stand together, we're going to be facing this horde of evil Muslims. They're going to kill everybody. They're going to wipe out Christianity. And this is where he has the very famous statement, Deus Vult. Of course, because he's giving all of this stuff in Latin. And Deus Vult means God wills it. Right? So we're going to go fight because God wills it. Which is kind of interesting. And there's a lot of, you can actually read summaries of Urban's account. There are about 4 or 5 different primary sources that record his speech. It should be noted that all of them are written after the First Crusade is over. So there's probably some selective self-editing going on here, but all of them have him giving this sort of quasi-apocalyptic sort of thing where it's like, this could be the end of the world. This could be the end of everything. Hey, KP, yeah, we got raided like right off the bat by David. So he brought all of the Mouse Guardians over. And I'm glad everybody's hanging around. I never look at the counter to see how many people are here. I just start talking. I have learned that if I keep my eyeball on the counter, it sort of distracts me, and I get anxious when I see people going down, and then I start thinking while I'm talking, like, did I make a joke that made somebody upset? I hope not. Or did they really just find that pun that bad? And that's fair, because I do make some pretty bad puns sometimes. But yeah, so God wills it. We're going to go fight. But it's not just a war, right? So as soon as he gives this big speech, God wills it, there's going to be a pretty interesting response. And that response is going to be led by a guy named Peter the Hermit. And as you might expect, he was a hermit. Now, this is a fair thing to explain, because in early Christianity, and even to some of the modern sects of monastic orders, hermitage was seen as a very positive thing, right? Like, look, I have forsaken the world, and I live out in the middle of the woods in a cave. Or one of the things that had been popular a little bit earlier in the church was, I'm a guy that lives on top of a pillar. These were called stylites that would literally live on top of a pillar. And they would have people that would bring them food. And one of the most famous ones was this guy named Saint Simeon. But anyway, yeah, we're on a mission from God. He's ready for a plague in a way that none of us were prepared. Yeah, exactly. So he was social distancing champion of 1095. Old Peter was. So he was a holy guy that a lot of people looked up to. And he gets this idea that if God wills it, that means that God is not going to let anybody lose, right? So basically, if God wills this to happen, he will protect his people. He will provide victory and provide sustenance. And, you know, because if God wills it, he's going to make it happen. Where there's a will, there's a way, right? So if God wills it, God's going to give a way. And Peter kind of runs around all over the southern part of Europe, telling everybody just to come on crusade. He's going to lead everybody over, like, come on, guys, we're going crusading. And this is very ill-advised. When Urban hears this, he's like, whoa, dude, calm down, back up. And honestly, Peter is not going to stop. He gets a whole bunch of people together, and we don't actually know how many he had. Somewhere in the tens of thousands of people, though, range. Like 40,000 is probably a high estimate, probably lower than that. Somewhere maybe 20, 25 is probably more likely, but if you read the sources, of course, they're going to overestimate things. Anyway, he leads these people over on what he calls the People's Crusade, which is kind of a bad idea because these people are not supplied, they're not armed, they don't really have very many knights, very, very few knights. And of course, in the medieval world, the center of your military strategy are the heavy mounted cavalry. These are sort of the core functional part of any good military engagement if you're a Western, soldier. They don't really have very many. They've got a lot of poor people. They've got a lot of people that were willing to sort of bug out on debt on the hope that God would provide, And this giant, untrained, unarmed, underprepared group starts marching its way across Europe to get to Constantinople. And this is not a really good thing because as they're going through Christian towns, but because they don't have food, they're raiding Christian towns. They are they're targeting Jewish populations in Eastern Europe. They're saying, oh, look, you don't believe in Jesus anyway. We're going to take all of your stuff. God has provided it. So there's a lot of anti-Semitism going on in this particular Exodus here. And when they get over to Constantinople, they sort of show up and they're like, hi, we're here to help. And Alexios looks out on them and he's like, oh no. No. He gets the gold medal and the laurel hat. Yeah, that's a good one. You put it in stream chat. Cool. We'll give it a check out after the stream. We have differing stories about what happened here. Therefore, we must fight to the death because God will not allow an innocent man to die a liar. Hey, there we go. Peter, hold my beer, hermit. Right? Hold my beer, watch me crusade. And when they get to Constantinople, Alexios is sort of freaked because here's this big under-equipped army. They're right outside the walls of Constantinople. And they go, would you let us in? And also ships to get across to Asia Minor, that'd be great. Could you supply those? And initially Alexios is like, dude, you guys got to go. Like, just turn back around. And Peter's like, God wills it. So we're not leaving. And this is when it starts getting bad for Alexios because this big group of people start effectively plundering the region around Constantinople. And eventually Alexios is just like, God, what can I do to get rid of you? And Peter's like, hey, could you get us to the other side? And let me point out something here that's a geographic sticking point. So if we zoom in, Constantinople sat right here on this peninsula. And if you note, there's this tiny little strip of water right here. It's called the Bosporus. And that's a really swift running current, and there were not bridges across it. There were ports on the backside of Constantinople, and there were ports over here on this side. This, by the way, is the modern-day city of Istanbul. Basically, all of this is the modern-day city of Istanbul. And now there are two bridges, and I've been over both of them. There's one right here, and there's one right here. This one's new, and it's actually pretty cool. Anyway, so they need ships to get across to the Asia side. So this is Europe, and this is Asia. And eventually, they start causing so much trouble that Alexios is just like, fine, I will take you to the other side. And he does. Istanbul is Constantinople. Yep. So he gets them to the other side, and they're like, okay, now God's going to will us some victories. No. No, that's not the case. Not the case at all. The People's Crusade fails miserably. In the first couple of battles that they are in, they basically get slaughtered. And almost all of them die. Peter manages to escape the last sort of big battle and gets his way back to basically the very edge of the Asia side and kind of like waves across like, can you come back and get me? And Alexios is like, you're over there, or you're staying over there. So Peter the Hermit and a very, very small group that is the remainder of the People's Crusade get stuck over here in Asia. Who saw that coming? Who saw where that came from? Right? It's a mess. It's a big mess. So what's going on while they're all getting themselves killed? Well, what's going on for them is that the Pope is putting together the criteria for crusade. All right? So there is actually kind of a formula for things to check off if it is an official crusade. Constantinople is in Assassin's Creed Revelations was cool. The first time you started to realize what an important city it is, and you were curious of the setting. Yeah. Constantinople was one of the most important cities on Earth for 1,000 years. That's really the only... no, even longer than that. For almost 2,000 years, just to be honest. Until the fall of the Ottoman Empire, Istanbul was one of the most important cities on Earth. easily. And of course, it's sort of built up from this little fishing village called Byzantium by Constantine after he becomes the solo emperor, and he steals basically everything from all over the empire to put it in there. So that's in the early three teens, or the late three teens is when he starts really pushing towards that. And in the 320s, he's moved into Constantinople. So from that point until about 1919, Istanbul is the stuff. It's an ancient city. It's got a lot of cool stuff. I wish when I was in Turkey, I had more time to spend there, but we weren't going for Istanbul. We were going for field experience stuff to go find menorahs carved into walls in southern Turkey down here in Kilikia, which we did find, and they're not boats. But that's a whole other story. Anyway, they didn't expect the Crusader Inquisition. We were on a mission, indeed. And that mission was to find Ephes Dark. And if you don't know what that is, it's an entire joke, and I said it purely for Figment's amusement. Anyway, so Peter is not dead, but he's pretty much done. And we can sort of back off the names here for just a second. All right, so Urban is developing sort of the checklist for what is a crusade and what isn't a crusade. And one of the things that we need to explain here, sort of a like right off the bat kind of thing, is that not every war between Christian forces and Muslim forces counts as a crusade. There are some requirements here. Number one, for it to be an actual crusade, it has to be named a crusade by the Pope. So whomever the Pope is at the time has to say, this is a crusade. Okay, so that's, and that itself seems like kind of a lame, like, oh, he's just got to say it? Yes. But when the Pope says something, when he's sitting on his fancy chair wearing his special hat, it means a lot, because he has the full authority of the papal office behind him, and this is the big deal. The Pope has to give the crusade the okay. And Urban has already given the crusade the okay, so what's next? Well, what's next is you have to take vows, and there are a lot of them. You have to vow that you are going to obey the leaders of the crusade that have been designated by the Pope. You have to vow that you are not going to harm Christians. You have to vow that you are going to basically uphold the cross, which is sort of this larger idea that you are undertaking this as a recognition that you are sacrificing what might be your life for the good of the church. And you have to basically take vows of being a good person, right? Like, you're not going to go be a horrible person while you're on crusade, because that's going to make the whole church look bad. And it's a fair thing to remember that they had to take all of these vows, because that's going to kind of come back up in a bit. And some of them apparently had their fingers crossed behind their back. Another thing, you had the opportunity with the crusade to get something called an indulgence. So the Roman Catholic Church at that time, and still today, has a particular part of their theology that they call purgatory. This is based on the idea that nobody that dies can bring sin into heaven. So if you die with unrepentant sin, you go to this place called purgatory, where you slowly burn off your sin over a long period of time. That might be 1 year or thousands of years, depending on how bad you were and how much you didn't repent for. And you can get this thing from the church called an indulgence, which is basically like a get out of purgatory card. And you would actually get a document from the church that would say, like, according to Pope so-and-so, signed Pope so-and-so, you have X number of years off of your stint in purgatory. Well, for going on crusade, they broke out the big indulgences. These are the ones that were called plenary indulgences, which basically means if you die while you're on crusade, you do not, pass purgatory. You go straight to heaven. You do not, like, if you die in the service of God and the church, you're getting the shoe straight into heaven, right? And a lot of people were like, "Hey, that's great. That's great. Not a crusade until the Pope crusade it." Exactly. And give all of your land and money to the church before you leave. That's not required, but we'll talk about that here in just a second. Gotta love the thought of angels and something working through that paperwork, right? We're getting a big influx in today. Michael, what's going on? Like, dude, I don't know. They're all just down there killing each other. Right? Okay, so who goes on crusade? A lot of people go on crusade. There are about 80,000 people from various points across Western Europe that sign up for crusade. There are English people, there are French people, there are German people, and there are a lot of Norman people. And most of these are what you might consider like the second and third brothers of the kings and the princes. The First Crusade doesn't have a lot of really big names when it comes to like the king of so-and-so. Those are later crusades. These are going to be like the king's younger brother or the duke's cousin. These people that are tangentially in power. They're nobles and they have a lot of money and they have access to stuff. And there are about 8,000 knights in the Crusader army or so. And they're all going to decide to go. But this is an expensive journey. For you to get from somewhere like England or France to Constantinople, that's expensive. And there's been a lot of research done in the last 20 or so years over how much this actually cost people to do. And some people, based on really, really detailed deep dives into things like church documentation and banking notes and stuff, effectively leverage themselves out to the hilt to be able to pay to go on crusade. Some of these people basically took out mortgages on their entire territories. Like, I am the count of this region. Like, I am Bohemond of Toronto, or I am Tancred de Hauteville, or Stephen of Blois, and I'm going to leverage my entire value so that I can go out on crusade. And it's fair to say that these people expected something out of it other than a go straight to heaven card, right? Too many people to go on crusade. Too many. Yeah, well, the Dukes of Hazzard. I see what you did there, and I absolutely appreciate that. If you'd only need like a year or 3 in purgatory, and the Pope writes a thing that lets you take off 7 years of purgatory, do you get a refund or do you get a gift card from Heaven Starbucks? Well, what that really means is you get to do 4 years worth of sinning while you're on crusade and still be okay. So you get the balance of that in bad stuff that you can do, right? I think the church has a good idea of how long in purgatory you get. That way there's no extreme couponing, right? I know that sheep go to heaven, but would dying on the crusade help the goats? No, the goats go to hell. That's what Cake said, right? The gravedigger puts on the forceps, the stonemason does all the work, the barber can give you a haircut, and the carpenter can take you out to lunch. But the sheep go to heaven and goats go to hell, Kyle. Come on, man. Keep up. All right. Cake, one of my favorite bands. I like those guys a lot. Okay, so we have all these people. And I can show you some of the people that end up going out on crusade. I have a few pictures of some of them. It's kind of hard to find pictures of a lot of them. For example, this guy. This guy sitting here is a dude named Baldwin. He is one of the Crusader leaders And this is actually him a little bit after the beginning of the Crusade, so I don't want to necessarily spoil too much of what's going on here. But this is Baldwin, and then we have this guy right here. This is Adhemar of Le Puy. If you are familiar with A Knight's Tale, and you know Count Adhemar, he's probably named after this guy, who was a very skilled tactician and a very brave fighter that led sort of from the front. He's going to be instrumental in a lot of the sort of big battles that happen on Crusade, and he's going to be a very popular leader. So also going, we have this guy whose name is Godfrey of Bouillon. So here we go, Godfrey, and notice here he's taking up the cross, all the cross symbols. This particular emblem right here is actually emblematic of the Kingdom of Jerusalem, which is something that pops up in just a little bit. Again, kind of spoilers, but alas. We do, but only... Wait. I'm sorry. I've missed some stuff. Hello, do you take this send coupon from the Pope? We do, but only 2 per customer. Your helmet looks inefficient unless you're hungry. So that was on a fresco. So this was him sort of at a party, I guess, or something. So we've got this big army. We've taken our vows. We've taken up the cross. We're going to march out. And there are sort of 4 groups. There are the British and the Germans and the Italians and the French. And they all sort of figure out their own way to get to Constantinople. But then they get over there, and now Alexios has to deal with them. Yeah. So Alexios is like, okay, there are a lot of people. I was not necessarily expecting this many. And they're like, oh, dude, we're here. We're here to throw down. We're taking it back. It's okay. Help us get across and we'll be fine. And honestly, Alexios was really skeptical about some of these people, especially the Normans, because he had dealings with the Normans prior, and the Byzantine Empire had dealings with the Normans prior, and the Normans were not particularly good at keeping their arrangements. The Normans were very interested in taking your land and beating the crap out of you, and would use effectively any reason as an excuse to do so. And Alexios gets this sort of back of his head feeling like, I don't think I want to really let them over. Because if I let them over into the territory, they're just going to take whatever isn't nailed down and call it theirs, aren't they? And so he gets this idea. The Norm McDonald's, alas. Yeah. Original version of the beer hat, but for food. So Alexios decides, I'm going to get what I can out of these people. And before he allows the Crusaders over on his ships, because they've got to get across the Bosphorus too, right? And he's the only person with enough ships to ferry them effectively across. Before he does that, he's going to extract from their leaders additional vows. They're going to vow to basically be friends with the Byzantine Empire. And most importantly, they're going to vow that any land that they take, they will return to the Byzantine Empire. And he tries to get them to swear a vow that they would follow his leadership. And a lot of them sort of expected Alexios to come out and lead them. Because there wasn't really one sort of central leader. The Pope had kind of designated leaders of the individual factions of the army. And a lot of them really thought that Alexios was going to ride out to battle with the Byzantine army with them. But Alexios was real skeptical of this whole thing and not necessarily interested in going out to fight with these folks. So he tries this idea, he kind of floats it like, I think you all should follow my battle plan. And they're like, are you going to come with us? And he's like, no, not really. And they're like, well, then we're going to do our own thing. And that's actually kind of a bad move. So what Alexios wanted them to do was basically get across here into Anatolia and move really slowly. Like take this region, and then take this region, and then take right here, and then take right here, and sort of round it up. And then take Anatolia back city by city so that they could return Anatolia and the food production that it represented to the Byzantine Empire. And what he was hoping was that this would basically allow the Byzantine army itself to recover, and then he wouldn't necessarily need the Crusaders and he could send them all back home because, again, he is really skeptical of these people, especially those pesky Normans. But he can't get them to swear to that. And he can't even get all of the people that are the leaders of these factions to swear to all of these things. But he gets enough of them to swear to return the land. And really, he's running out of time because the longer they're camped right outside of Constantinople, the more food they're eating and the more they're sort of wrecking the area. You're talking about the origin of marching bands. I'm beginning to feel attacked. So, Joey, at this point, the Normans were not just Scandinavians. They were Scandinavians that had intermarried into French nobility. So there was a lot of Scandinavian-French intermixing going on by this point. Now, some of the Normans, especially like the leaders of the Norman families, they were still very much Scandinavian in nature, and they sort of kept themselves more or less, marrying their own people. But a lot of the sort of day-to-day Norman people had taken French spouses, or at this point, even to a certain extent, British spouses or Italian spouses. So there were they were not necessarily pure Norse people at that point. Didn't he also ask them not to pillage his cities? Yes. So you've got to be friends to the Byzantines. Like when you find the Byzantines out there, because there are a lot of them, you must be friendly with my people. You can't just go murder all of my people, right? When you find my cities and you liberate my cities, you need to be nice to them and you need to not try to take over them. You need to, help them if you can. I'm going to send letters with you to, basically give these people knowledge that I've, sort of given my blessing to this endeavor, but you've got to be nice and you've got to give me my land back. Lol bros, please no pillage, wink wink. We are God's warriors, wink wink. Yeah. That Rollo guy is still setting examples. So yeah, Rollo is about 300 years prior to this. Rollo's in not 300. Rollo's in the 800s, the late 800s. So about 200 years or so. 200 years and a little bit from this particular period. Yeah, so Rollo is William the Conqueror's either father or uncle, and William the Conqueror was in Hastings that took over England in 1056. So this is 1096. So it's been a little while. It's been almost 200 years since Rollo. I'm actually related to Rollo. I am a direct descendant of Rollo. And I am a cousin of William the Conqueror. So, cool stuff, I guess. That's why I don't tan. Fun fact. All right, so the Crusaders get over here into Anatolia, and what do? You would think, they organized, they got themselves in an organized battle plan, and they were able to cooperatively make really good decisions and attack in one main force and punish the as they called them, the infidels. That is absolutely not what happened. They got over there and they split into halves, and then they sort of went their own way a little bit until they realized, oh crap, we can't do this. Because here's what's going on over in the Seljuk world. The last big Seljuk leader was this guy named Alp Arslan, and he had kind of been lucky enough to unify a lot of this region, but when he died, his sons and his family were all basically fighting amongst themselves. So the remainder of the Arslan family, which is just lion in Turkish, are going to sort of be fighting over the pieces of the empire. And there is a sort of a royal Seljuk leader over here in Anatolia, but there's another one right here in Syria, and then there's another one here sort of in the northern Levantine region, and then there's even another sort of branch of a different group of Turkish people that are over here in northern Mesopotamia, and they're all fighting over this region sort of simultaneously. So after the debacle with Peter the Hermit, the Seljuk leadership think that's sort of it. Like, we're not really going to have very much trouble with these people. If they do decide to come back, we're going to be able to beat the junk out of them, right? So when they hear, oh, there's another army of Christians coming, they're like, we don't need to worry about them. We can just, we can shut the doors and we can ride them out, because the last group that came over was so horribly underprepared and unfit that there's no, we don't need to worry about that. And that is a fateful decision, because this is what's going to be basically the point where the Crusaders are going to figure out that they need to stop acting crazy, because they split into different groups, and half of them go up this way to attack this city, and half of them go over here to attack this city, and they're not acting in coordinated fashion. And even though they're winning their battles, they're taking a lot of casualties. And they don't have limitless supplies or resource lines. Their supply lines go back to Europe, right? So they kind of get the big head, and they get encouraged by this idea that God wills it, right? They win some victories, they get some false senses of security, and they do not secure Anatolia at all. They win a couple of battles in the region, but then they decide, we just need to go for Antioch. Let's just go straight to Antioch. It's the patriarch city. It's where all the cool stuff is. There are a lot of people there. We need to go just get Antioch. Well, a lot of them agree on this, but not everybody agrees on this. In fact, there's going to be a little bit of a debate over whether or not they need to, do we need to secure a supply line? Do we need to conquer all of Anatolia? And they get word back from Alexios. He's like, are you conquering Anatolia? And they're like, no, we're going to go get Antioch. And he's like, what are you talking about? So, Antioch is right here. And they're basically going to leave all of this territory behind them unconquered. And Alexios is like, no, that's such a bad idea. Please do not do that. And they're like, God wills it. God wills it. We're good. We've already beaten these guys. And he's like, you have not beaten the Turks. You have beaten some of the Turks. You have not beaten the Turks. And they're like, whatever, dude. God wills it. It's okay. This is not so great. Baldwin, the guy that I showed you, actually decides he's going to go over here to this city called Edessa, which was a really big trade city back in the Byzantine day. And he's like, oh yeah, I'm going to go conquer Edessa, and then I'm going to get all of these Armenian Christians on my side. I'm going to sort of swell our ranks with Armenian Christians who are going to rush to aid us. And Baldwin's army, when they get to Edessa, barely manages to even get in the city. And then when he does get into the city, he has to play some really weird and fast political games to keep the city, because when he pushes the Turkish force out of Edessa, they run basically just over the hill and find another larger group of Turkish soldiers, and they're like, yo, this army that's coming, they're like the real army. They're like the ones with armor and weapons and crap. We need to get our stuff together. And then the Turkish army shows back up to siege Edessa. Not exactly the genius of Alexander, is it? No, it isn't. I want to know who was talking to God and getting these battle notes, right? Like, I need to go pray. God, should we take Edessa? Yes! See, God said so. God wills it. So Baldwin ends up having to marry into some local Armenian families that have some regional power. This is not going to be the great swell of Armenian Christian numbers that Baldwin expected, because it turns out that after living under Muslim control for a couple of centuries, a lot of those people had converted to Islam, and Armenia was not, uniformly Christian anymore. So the whole debacle around Edessa actually cost the Crusaders a whole bunch of supplies, a whole bunch of soldiers, and doesn't really get them very much in the process, because Baldwin even has to leave some of his people behind to try to leverage out the city. And then when they don't want to stay, he has to hire mercenaries, right? So there are these basically pirates who are Christian, finger quote, that had sort of figured out what the Crusaders were doing and had sailed up to right around over in here and figured like, hey, look, maybe we can mercenary for these guys. It looks like they need supplies and ships. Maybe we can sell them some stuff. And Baldwin's like, I will hire all of you if you will sit here in Edessa and not let the Turks take it back. And they're like, all we got to do is sit. He's like, well, you could also be under imminent threat of death, and if they catch you, they're probably going to chop your heads off. And they're like, how much are you paying? And Baldwin's like, as much as you want? And they're like, deal. So, yeah, now we've got mercenaries holding Edessa and a Crusader army that has already lost probably a quarter of its strength before it even gets to Antioch. Also, bunches of bad guys behind them. Let's not forget that. I like this. I just sit and do things, right? It's nice. So when they get to Antioch, it is 1097. And the Turkish forces that are there go, oh, crud, this is actually a big army. We need to go run into the city. And Antioch had been and was a really, really big city. This is a well-defended city with really thick walls, very tall walls. These are the good old-fashioned march a unit of soldiers across the top of them. You can't get us because we can just sit in here and wait you out kind of city. And there's a river running through the middle of it because, you just build cities that way because it's the smart thing to do. So to deprive them of water, if you really want to, you have to build a dam across this entire big river. It's a good, easily defendable city. And here comes this Crusader army like, hey, you should just give us Antioch. And the Turks are like, no. And then the Crusaders are like, but God wills it. God wills sit. That's great. Were the angels and the ancestors making bets, you think? Watching all this go down? Who knows? Who knows? There are no telling what's going on here, man. It's all just craziness. So the Crusaders decide, we're going to fight you. And there's a sort of a big attempt at taking the city, but they cannot take the city. And what they decide to do is, we'll just lay siege to the city and we'll wait you out. And the Turks are like, that benefits us perfectly because, yeah, that's fine. We'll just wait for our reinforcements to arrive. And this is where the internal problems of the Seljuk Turks are going to bite them in the butt again. Because nobody really wants to go help the other side. This is actually beneficial for some of the Turkish branches. If these people all die, it's going to hurt some of their enemies. Like, yeah, okay. And then, these Christians, they're so far behind enemy lines, they're cut off from all of their supply lines. We can just, they'll kill all of our enemies, and then when they take the city, they won't be able to hold it. They'll go back home, or we'll go kill them, and then we'll be out 2 enemies, right? And then we can go take Antioch. So the people inside of Antioch don't get resupplied. But here's the kicker. The Christians start sending word back to Alexios, and they're like, hey, we're sieging Antioch. We could really use some supplies. And Alexios is like, you know where you could have gotten supplies? Anatolia. Wouldn't it be nice if you had, taken Anatolia? So now there would have been a land route between me and you so that I could have marched my army over there. Wouldn't that be great? And they're like, yeah, but you've got ships. And he's like, you understand that this whole coastline right here is nothing but Pirate Central. And if you don't have the land, the ships are going to all get wrecked. So why don't you just get wrecked? And Alexios is really, really getting ticked at this whole situation here. Or like me watching a cooking show flipping out over the choices like, you're going to put that dish with that pairing? No. My God wills it. Wait, aren't we worshiping the same God? Not according to us. Isn't your God called Yahweh? Yes, but ours is called Allah. But isn't it that the same word for God? Yes, it is. Isn't... And then we'll just get into it like this devolution of argument. That is not a good place to go sailing, my dudes. Yeah, this region right here, not so great for the sailing. It's super piratey. So here are the Crusaders at Antioch, and they're stuck. And it gets really, really bad, to quote Dr. Cox. And they run out of food, and then they resort to cannibalism. Because when you're that hungry and you're trying to get the Turks out of the area, Jimmy starts looking real nice when Jimmy dies. And they had already eaten a lot of the animals in the area, like a dog or a cat or a rat. Those were easy to get. Some people had wanted to eat the horses, but they had already lost a lot of horses already. And again, cavalry is sort of the central theme of any medieval European army, and you can't get rid of all the horses. So you can't really eat the horses, but they do look tasty, but we can just eat people. We'll just eat people. Right? We can just swim our supplies over. God gills it. That's a good one. That's a good one. Just submarine it, right? Just submarine it over. So by the time it gets to 1098, the situation inside of Antioch had become bad enough that the city ends up falling. And when the Crusaders get in, they're so excited to be inside the city, they kind of just start killing folk. And they're kind of killing indiscriminately, and they end up killing... non-combatants, right? So they're killing like Muslim women and children. They kill a lot of Jewish people, and they even kill some Christian people because they were just sort of excited about getting into the city. And they're like, hey, we don't have any food, and you all don't really have any food, so we can't supply you with anything, and we're so happy that we're in the city, and if you're standing in the street telling us to go away, we're going to kill you. So yeah, the Siege of Antioch, 1097, 1098, not so great for the Crusader army there. But they have it. Woo! They have it. And they decide to reorganize, and what's next? Well, let's go get Jerusalem. And at this point, Alexios has basically written them off. He's like, wait. You've taken Antioch after this really big siege, and you've understood the importance of having supplies. And yet, you're still not going to turn around and take Anatolia? You're just going to push on forward into enemy territory? Do your thing. Just go do your thing, man. Just do your thing. Adventure! Hey, Atuna. So, they need to get to Jerusalem. And it turns out there's somebody that knows where Jerusalem is and that can lead them there, because he had been there on pilgrimage after his group had sort of been wiped out. And guess what? It's the return of Peter the Hermit. Dun 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 dun. Here's old Peter. He's riding a donkey, which is pretty clearly imagery. Here are the Crusaders like, hey, where do we go? And he's like, you go over yonder. And what is over yonder? It's Jerusalem. Look-a there. Look-a there. It's Jerusalem. So this is Peter the Hermit leading the Crusaders to Jerusalem. He should have stayed in a cave. Well, after he realized that Alexios was not going to ferry him back over, he had actually gotten into contact with some of the local Turkish leaders and asked to go on a pilgrimage. And so he had actually already been to Jerusalem and come back to meet up with the Crusaders. And they're like, wait, we're going to Jerusalem now. And he's like, come on, guys, I'll show you where it's at. Also, can you kill all these folks? Because I was supposed to do that. They're like, oh, you're that Peter the Hermit. He's like, yeah. They're like, where's all the people's army? And he's like, They're on vacation? Let's not talk about them very much. Anyway, so he should have stayed in his cave. The enemy has supplies, we'll be fine. Yeah. Funny story about them. Yeah, I mean, they're all sleeping. They're taking a dirt nap. Anyway, so they get down to Jerusalem. They show up at Jerusalem and they're like, hey, Turkish people, give us the city. And they're like, we're not Turkish. They're like, what do you mean you're not Turkish? You're like, we're Egyptian. And they're like, okay, hey, you Muslim people, give us the city. And they're like, no, we're not gonna. And they're like, but God wills it. And they're like, no. No, we're gonna take our time, and you're gonna go away eventually because you're way out of position and you don't have any hope of supplies, and you're stretched out already, and you've lost a whole bunch of people, and you're down to basically a third of your army now, and we've got an entire city full of supplies with cisterns and stuff, and you'll never wait us out. But the difference is that the Fatimid Caliphate, who were ruling down in Egypt, had actually just taken over Jerusalem the year before from the Seljuks. So the Seljuks being in disarray had actually proved beneficial for other Muslim forces in the region. And the Fatimid Caliphate down here in Egypt had started creeping its way up and had taken Jerusalem just a little bit more than a year prior to the Crusaders showing up. And there were a lot of people inside of Jerusalem that did not like the Fatimids, and they're like, hey, we are Turkish and we don't like these people being here, so I mean, we're not going to necessarily fight you if you want to get rid of them. Was that a reenactment or a recorded conversation? I don't have a direct transcript of what transpired. We could wait you out of supplies. Oh my gosh, I can't read. We could wait you out if you were nice and shared your supplies, right? Like if you just let us take some of that, we could hang out with you. Demon Monster, yes, this is a viewer request stream, so we are talking about the First Crusade, which is what the viewers chose to talk about. But if you have questions, you're welcome to ask. Throw some stuff out there. I'd be happy to ramble about some things if I know anything about it. Chase some rabbits here and there. That's fine too. And welcome to the chat. Good to see you. So yeah, let's lay siege to Jerusalem. Yeah. And so they do. Can you request anything? The way that we do viewer requests are two ways. So one way is you hang out in the channel long enough to get enough adventure points, which are basically your channel points, and then you can spend channel points to request one. That's anything. Or if we're doing an open call, what happens is I say, hey, we're going to do an open call for viewer requests, and I take the first 4 that sort of come through the gate, and then we put them in a poll, and everybody that's in the chat gets to vote. So I don't say anything because we've had some kind of slightly silly ideas before, like history of history, yeah, that kind of stuff. But if it's an honest request with material that I think is enough to get a stream out of, yeah, we'll do just about anything. How many points do you need? For the first time, 10,000. It's 10,000 points for the first one, and then if you want a second one or a third one, it's 20,000 after that. So, history of history, please don't. history of the Crusades. Yeah, see, that kind of stuff, that's like a 400 level, not even a 400 level, that's like a 700 level doctoral seminar. And honestly, I'm not interested in doing that much research to provide it, and I don't think that the people that are in the stream would be super interested in hearing all of that stuff. I could talk about the historiography of the Crusades, because it was pretty clearly a messy situation that people had to sort of clean up after the fact. We could talk about that, but I don't think it would be very interesting for most viewers. It's very specific. It's very bland. Yeah, that kind of stuff. Moose enjoys this part of the sort of poking at me thing, and I don't mind it, but this is sort of a common situation that happens here. Anyway, so we're sieging Jerusalem. God wills it. Woo, we're going to get Jerusalem. And as you might expect, it's a pretty bad siege because they're way, way behind enemy lines. Now they had received some supplies. They had received a couple of ships from England that had brought some supplies over. They had received some reinforcements from some of the Normans, but this is not thousands and thousands of troops. This would have been mostly horses. Horses were what they were lacking. Again, horses are a big deal for a medieval army. And when they get to Jerusalem, they lay the siege to the city, and then they go, man, is this going to be another Antioch? Are we going to have to eat Jimmy again? Like, we ate Jimmy's cousin. Now I've got to eat Fred. And, man, this is bad. Like, what are we going to do here? And it turns out that laying siege to Jerusalem is actually easier than laying siege to Antioch. Because, again, the city itself was a little bit more in disarray. Nobody was really going to come help Jerusalem. So the siege of Jerusalem is not as bad as the siege of Antioch for the Crusaders. It's way worse for the people that are inside Jerusalem. Because when the Crusaders get into Jerusalem, they weren't tired. And there is indiscriminate murder inside of Jerusalem. They kill basically anybody. And it was nasty. And it's pretty bad. History of Shane. You tried to throw money at me for a hot tub stream and it didn't work. I think the window of that funniness has passed, and I would have felt really weird taking enough money from you to make that happen. That would have been a really weird situation. No, Bart, put it down. Put it down. Put it down, Bart. Yeah, the Simpsons reference. Problems on top of problems on top of problems. That's what's happening. Yeah, pretty much. Pretty much. So they break into Jerusalem, and they're just like, we'll kill everybody. And they do. They kill thousands of people inside of Jerusalem. I'm sorry, what was the point of holding Jerusalem at this point? Greek? Who was holding Jerusalem? Okay, no. It wasn't the Greek Shmonite. So the city of Jerusalem at that point was still fairly multicultural as it is today. There were Jewish people inside. There were Christians inside. There were Turkish Muslims inside. But the actual holders of Jerusalem were the Fatimid caliphs of Egypt, or the Fatimid Caliphate of Egypt. And one of the biggest differences between the Fatimids and the Seljuks was their particular interpretation of Islam. There are different branches of Islam, so there's Sunni and Shia and Kharijite, and there's a whole bunch of different what we might consider denominations of Islam. And the Sunni and the Shia have the biggest theological differences, and there were some pretty big differences between the way that the Seljuks were interpreting Islam and the Fatimids, and no good self-respecting Seljuk would have fought on the side of the Fatimids, and the Fatimids hated the Seljuks, and so on and so forth. So effectively, if there was going to be any relief coming out of or coming to Jerusalem in the form of Muslim relief, it would have been coming all the way from Egypt. And the Fatimid Caliphate was a little bit overextended already, and they weren't necessarily interested in sort of investing enough troops into this situation to besiege the besiegers, because the city itself was not guaranteed to just capitulate to them even if they were going to get there. So it was a big messy issue for the entire group. A hot tub stream is too expensive. What about a kiddie pool stream? Oh man. No, I don't want to bring a kiddie pool into my house. I have hardwood floors, and I don't want the the chance of that turning into my entire floors getting wet and seeping down it. No, we're not going to do a kiddie pool stream. No. Okay, so they get into the city of Jerusalem. They go to the big churches in Jerusalem. They have all of these big parties in Jerusalem. And at that point, they decide, you know what? We probably should stop, right? There were some people that were thinking, oh man, we've gotten 2 out of the 5 patriarch cities. Alexandria is just like right there, man. We could like maybe go get that. And they're like, no. And that was a good decision. Alexandria was a larger city than both Antioch and Jerusalem. Alexandria might have been bigger than Antioch and Jerusalem put together. If you took Alexandria and the surrounding regions, it would have been bigger than Antioch and Jerusalem put together. And by that point, the Crusader armies had been whittled down to basically an occupying force. They were no longer a mobile fighting force. We have enough people to sit inside the walls and hold the territory that we have. So they decide, okay, at this point, we're done. This is 1099. We're done with the war. We have all this territory. And Alexios is like, okay, cool, give it back. Because you swore to, right? You swore to give it back. And it's at this point that some of the French nobles and some of the Norman nobles go, well, you know what? You never really helped us that much. And we swore to be your friends, but you weren't really our friend. So we're not going to be happy with you. And we're not going to give you your land back. Could I stream from my phone from an archaeological dig? Yeah. As long as I had a strong enough signal, I could absolutely stream from a dig. Do you have a particular location in mind, or is this like, hey, next time you're out on a dig site, will you start streaming? I would love to do on-site stuff, and this is actually stuff that I've talked about before. And I was potentially going to do some stuff over the summer before COVID decided to go all Delta on us. I was going to try to do a live stream from a fort that's not too far away from me. It was a fort that was built by the government of the United States, but then became sort of important during the Civil War. Yeah, and KP and Mac are trying to convince me to get a drone. The problem with doing drone work is twofold. Number one, drones are expensive. And number two, a lot of places that are designated national parks or state parks don't allow drones. So I don't want to get in like really big trouble flying a drone around. Oh no, Kelly, that sucks. That is horrible. Are these required, Kelly? Like, do you have to have these? Oh no. That is horrible. That is absolutely horrible. I'm so sorry to hear that, Kelly. And I know those are just like fingernail pulling off stuff. Hey, Techman. I thought that I joined the crew of Sade, the singer. Sade, yeah. You found a juvenile possum in the yard. Okie dokie. Don't show Daria that. She would probably take it home and love it. You only saw one parent tonight, and it took you that long? Or is this like you have to sit in the room until a certain period of time, and whomever comes to see you is going to come see you? Welcome to American K-12 education. Yeah, I remember those days. And I don't. I am glad that I am no longer in those days. Man. Nobody wants to see an art teacher unless there's a problem. Yeah, I feel you, Kelly. I'm really sorry to hear that. You did that for one school year? Yeah, I taught grade school for 6 years, and I taught fifth, 7th, 8th, ninth, 10th, 11th, and 12th over the course of those 6 years. So, and I was I was mostly teaching history, and inevitably the issue was history is supposed to be an easy subject. Why is my kid failing history? Nix, I didn't know you were a professor. What do you teach? And also, do you stream that? What does he only draw like Picasso? Your child is clearly a cubist. Just let them express themselves. Anyway, so there's a split in the decision here. The Crusaders decide, yeah, we've taken all this land, and it's not really connected to the Byzantine Empire, so we're not going to give it back. And Alexios at this point is livid and starts trying to send word back to Urban saying that these people had broken vows that they had taken before God. And Urban sort of gets dragged into the middle of this political situation. But what ends up happening is the creation of a group of small little countries that get referred to as the Crusader states. Crusader states. You're no longer teaching, but you did biology and nursing. Ah, that'd be cool. Because they can't paint, Cindy. What kind of nutritional content of the pace? Let's look at a map of the Crusader states. Okay. So here we have the county of Edessa. So if you'll remember Baldwin, he was up here in Edessa trying to free all of these Armenian Christians that were going to show up and help out, right? Yeah, and that didn't go so well, but he's got this whole region up here, I'm going to be a count. Woo! So now we have Count Baldwin. Dun 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 dun. We have the Principality of Antioch, where we decide, okay, what's going to go on here? Well, there's a guy that was running around on Crusade with them. His name was Bohemond of Toronto. He is one of those Norman lords. He is going to claim the Principality of Antioch of himself. He was already a prince. He was already a prince over in the Norman territory. So he's like, now I will be double prince. I'll be Prince of Antioch as well. Da 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 da. We have the County of Tripoli, which is based around the city of Tripoli here. Is he a count now? And why not call himself a duke? So duke is technically a higher rank than a count. But a lot of these people had issues with the noble families that they were already in. Right? So like I was already in one of these noble families of Europe, and there was some discrepancy between families of, wait, you're not the oldest brother. You can't rank higher than your brother, or you can't rank higher than your dad, right? So you don't need to take the big title. Just be a count, or if you're but like Bohemond was already a prince. So he's like, I can just be prince again. Boom, Principality of Antioch, right? But Baldwin was he really wanted to call himself a king, if we're being honest. But that wasn't ever really going to fly based on the family politics that he was under. So count was about all that he could get away with. We have the County of Tripoli. We haven't mentioned the guy that takes that over. And honestly, it's, in the grand scheme of things, not particularly important. And then we have the all-important Kingdom of Jerusalem. And there is this whole spiel thing here where everybody kind of wonders who's going to get Jerusalem, who's going to get, the big deal. Actually, that Tripoli is not the same shores of the shores of Tripoli. That Tripoli is over in Africa. This is a different Tripoli. That stinks. They thought they could. I thought they could at that point do whatever they wanted. Yeah. Well, again. So let's remember. These people are setting up these territories. They don't have supplies, right? They are going to be at the whim of everybody in Europe to send them reinforcements and trade. So you can't really piss everybody off at you, because then they're not going to help you. And as it was, the county of Edessa only had access through a river that ran up through what was pretty indefensible territory around the city of Tarsus. So he kind of had to play nice with Europeans. He can't just go decide to do whatever he wants to, because if he ticks off the people back home, he might not end up with anything. So you gotta play nice. All right, so there's this question of who's going to be king of Jerusalem. Well, there's a lot of back and forth, and some people are like, oh, this guy should be king, and some people are like, Baldwin should be king, and then Baldwin was like, oh no, I can't be king. I'll pass up being king. I'll go back to Edessa. And there were some people that were like, okay, well, what about, some of these people from Toulouse? There's a big famous crusader called Raymond of Toulouse. What about his family? Can they take over? They're like, no. What about Tancred de Hauteville? Tancred is actually in the running here, but the guy that ends up getting it is the snack helmet guy, Godfrey of Bouillon. He ends up king of Jerusalem. Now, this is done with a bit of a power sharing structure. I mentioned the guy Tancred, Tancred de Hauteville, and Tancred is actually going to be inside of the kingdom of Jerusalem, but he's going to be a prince in the kingdom of Jerusalem. He's the Prince of Galilee, right? And I actually was able to locate one of his coins. So this is a coin of Tancred as Prince of Galilee. So here we have the good old-fashioned cross. We have Nika, which is victory. We have here his beard and his sword, and here's my Crusader stuff. So yeah, this is a coin of Tancred as Prince of Galilee within the Kingdom of Jerusalem. At what point does Legolas, son of Rob Roy, take the city? It still only counts as one. I don't know when Legolas shows up. There's a snack helmet guy. Yeah, earlier we showed a picture, let me see if I can find him again, of Godfrey of Bouillon, who's this guy. So everybody was like, this is a horrible helmet. And then we decided that it was the forerunner of the beer hat, and it's called the snack helmet. So yeah, Godfrey of Bouillon, this is the guy that becomes king of Jerusalem. And at that point, you had me think that there was a snack cake reference happening, and that hasn't happened in a long time. Oh yeah. I actually talked about snack cakes in class today. Is that a beard, or is he a messy eater? It's a beard. It's a little kind of pointy beard with a kind of a stringy mustache. Yeah. All right, ladies and gents, and that's the end of the First Crusade. They don't give the land back. They take it for themselves. They set up feudal states inside of the Holy Land. They open the region up for Christians to come on pilgrimage, and then they try to live off the proceeds, which is tough. And waiting in the wings are some pretty not nice Turks that are going to figure out how to get the Seljuks in line. And it won't be very long before things are going to happen. It was meant to be a Kingdom of Heaven reference because he was, Orlando Bloom was in Kingdom of Heaven. Oh, man. It's been so long since I've seen that movie, and honestly, it is just so historically inaccurate. I sort of cringe as I'm watching it. Looking forward to The Last Crusade. Alexandretta! I briefly considered using a picture of the shield from Last Crusade as a reference of what a medieval shield would have looked like and not actually saying anything about it, just to see if anybody would go, is that the thing from Last Crusade? And Liam Neeson was his father. Yeah. I'm with you now, Tuna. It's just oh man, with historical movies that are that bad, I try to block them out sometimes. It's a good reference. It's a good reference. The Pope should go help on commercial ships and religious people. The Holy Crusade. The Pope never actually goes on crusade. That would be far too perilous. No, it's far too perilous. Probably end up in Petra. Not at all what the movie's promised. Yeah, I know. It's like, that's not in Egypt. All right, ladies and gents. That's all for the first Crusade. I hope that it met all of your expectations as a viewer request. Should we have a history of the time between the First and Second Crusade, or is it sufficient to just vote for the Second Crusade? If we did a Second Crusade stream, I would certainly back that up to include the Crusader states period, because the Second Crusade, which is over in the 1100s, is actually called as an attempt to keep the Crusader states from collapsing, because they were collapsing. And the Second Crusade is is a joke. Or just vote for the third, the more fun one. Yeah, the third one is probably... So the first one is the only really successful one. The second one is a hot mess. The third one starts off catastrophically because the German emperor falls into a river and dies before they even get to the Crusade territory. And then the fourth one is like, what would happen if what's the guy that writes Guardians of the Galaxy? Gunn? What's his first name? Is it Peter? Pete? No. Who's the Gunn? James Gunn. Is it James Gunn? James Gunn. Yeah, there we go. The Fourth Crusade is like, what would happen if James Gunn wrote a Crusade movie? It's like, nobody kills the bad guys and we all just go on hijink adventures. The fact it was a river is debated. Some say it was a creek. All right. The Fifth Crusade is straight to video. It actually is. It actually is. The 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, and 9th Crusades are all just sort of really horrible straight to video parodies. Monty Python and the Next Crusade. Monty Python has a good documentary. They're looking for the Holy Grail. And that's sort of after the Crusades a little bit. Okay, something is happening here. And my stream is going crazy. Oh, OBS. Don't you do it. Is my computer crashing? I don't actually know what's going on here. OBS is going wonky on me. Okay. Well, my whole screen went black. We can hear you, but the video is going bonkers. Yeah, it's friggin' video setting on this computer, man. I don't know. I don't know what's going on. Yeah, time to raid in a hurry. I think that's probably a good idea. Let's go see who we can raid before everything just goes just complete bat crap crazy. Ba-dum-bum-bum. All right, let's see who is on. Whoa, stream is being trippy. Yeah, it's a mess. I don't know what's going on. There's something going on with my actual computer here and the way that I'm trying to send streaming material, and I really just need a new graphics card, and it's not in the books anytime soon. All right, let's see who's live. See what we might be able to do. So we might be able to raid. See who the people are. Let's see if this guy is still streaming. Indeed. Yeah.
Multiple studies have shown that.
Okay, so in our attempt, oh wait. Rank 3 things: Shane's stream face, Shane's notepad, Shane's picture zone. What do I like the most? Honestly, this isn't doing much for me. It's not particularly attractive, and it doesn't have a lot of good qualities. My favorite part is the little guy that's down there in the corner. The little animated guy with the adventure hat and the map. And for some reason, Google Earth has just died on me. Oh, wow. Well, there we go. That's interesting. So I don't know what's up with that. But, okay, so, no KP, we have a viewer request redemption. So our next viewer request stream is in sort of our ongoing series of history of Israel. So we will be doing another history of the modern state of Israel, picking up from where we left off at the end of David Ben-Gurion's term as Prime Minister of Israel, and then going until I feel like we have to stop. We're definitely going to cover the war in 67 in the next one, though. And that is going to be a lot to unpack. So, Shiggy, what were you requesting? Honestly, they just sort of they sort of come at me so rapidly I can't remember. Oh yeah, you're good. But yeah, Batbird redeemed Choose Your Own Adventure again to get History of Israel Part 3, and we'll get as much as we can until we run out of stream time and cram it into that stream. So, religion in the Ottoman Empire. Islam. Sunni Islam. There you go. But they had some interesting takes on it. All right. So in our attempt of raiding new people and visiting new locations and being in our sort of trying to expand our world, we're going to go raid another member of Knowledge Foundation. I'm sorry, the Knowledge Fellowship. The streamer's name is I'm Really Important. I have never been to I'm Really Important stream before. This is a political chat. Looks like there are sort of a panel of guests here. There are lots of people talking. Some people are gesticulating. So I don't know exactly what we're going to get into. But we're going to go raid I'm Really Important. I doubt that it's going to show up because it says alerts muted. However, we can still do our raid call of adventure. And if you have any of those lovely adventure hats, you can throw those into the chat. The next time you'll definitely see me is Thursday night. Come back around, we'll be talking in our typical Adventures in History stream, where we will be looking at sort of a wide view of smaller kingdoms in Asia that are not necessarily large enough to have a dedicated stream for themselves. So we're going to kind of put them all together and talk about what's going on around China in Asia at that point, and we'll have a good one. Not as important as Spartacus, though. Well, you know. All right, so we're going to go raid I'm Really Important. Battle Cry is adventure. Throw those hats in. I hope that everybody has a great next couple of days. I will see you again on Thursday. We will be doing our Adventures in History, talking about Asia and cool cultures around China. Yeah. Otherwise, have a great couple of days, and I'll see you next time. Thanks, everybody. Have a good night.